Welcome everyone to our webinar. This webinar, so that you're in the right place. This webinar is for 2017, 2018, and 2019 wildfire survivors in California. So we're only going to talk about California. Colorado, if we have any Colorado people that are joining us, we will have a separate one for you. You're obviously welcome to watch, but all of the regulations and laws we're going to deal with today are California. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Just a few housekeeping things. Over, at least on my far right of my bar, is the Q&A. Go ahead and type your questions in there, and we will get them answered. We did get a couple of questions in advance that I will address as we go along, but go ahead and get them answered. We will have a chance at the end for you to raise your hand if you have more questions to ask. So hopefully this is gonna get you going. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my slideshow started here. And there we go. We have to start here. Okay. So the purpose of this webinar is to, for you guys that have been going at your claims for a couple years now, we want to help you, get the last amount of money you're owed, get your claims resolved so that you can move on with your lives. So that's the purpose of this webinar. Really quickly, for those of you joining us for the first time, United Policyholders, we are a 501c3 not-for-profit charitable organization with a mission to provide a trusted information resource and respected voice for insurance. I can't talk, I'll get better. For insurance consumers in all 50 states. This year's our 30th year helping disaster survivors. Our co-founder and executive director, Amy Bach, has been with United Policyholders since 1991, right after the Oakland Hills fire. So that has allowed UP to gather a lot of expertise in disaster recovery and insurance. We are not for profit, not for sale. We're funded entirely by donations and grants, which allows us to be objective. Okay, a little bit about our team up. We do have a professional staff. Three of us are with you here today. And we have a lot of partners. We have a lot of government and nonprofit partners. We work closely with different branches of the government, with the Department of Insurance and so forth. We have a lot of volunteers. We have a lot of volunteers that come from previous disasters like yours, who made it out the other side and pay it forward. If you haven't joined one of the Survivor to Survivor events, we would highly recommend it. It's a really good place for people who have been through the whole situation and come out the other side to meet with current people who are having the same issues. We also have a lot of consumer-oriented professionals, and we have loss estimators, lawyers, public adjusters, CPAs, accountants, and construction and real estate professionals. So altogether, that makes up our team. So the fine print, this workshop is intended to be general guidance only, not legal advice. If you have a specific legal question, we recommend you consult an experienced insurance attorney. Super important. Not everybody is familiar with this type of law. I am going to show you some of our sponsors that are available to help you through this. And we know them and we trust them, but we can't endorse or warrant any of their work. Okay. And by this webinar, we're not creating a professional client relationship. Okay, so those of you who don't know me, my name is Sandra Watts. I'm a project coordinator here at United Policyholders. I work part-time for UP as doing these webinars, doing instructional programs to people who've been through disasters. I've been in the insurance claims arena for 30 years. I was an insurance adjuster, I was a team manager, I was an agent for a while, so all sorts of other things. I also have some restoration background as well. So, okay, also with us today, who you'll see here is Elise Hicks. Elise is our staff attorney. We're really happy to have her. She joined us in December of last year. And Elise also has a long history of working with policyholders. And she was a licensed insurance agent when she graduated from college before going to law school. And Elise works very closely with Amy Bach, our executive director, and in the advocacy and action programs, which deal with certain case law that benefits policyholders. We weigh in on a lot of those things, also the legislative arena and the disaster recovery like we're doing tonight. So thanks for joining us, Elise. Okay, we have a lot to cover. I have a lot of slides, but this is our home stretch. We want to help you, get out the other side, okay? So it's going to seem a little redundant where I start, but I get a lot of questions from people asking if they have been paid everything that they're owed under their policy. Okay, so I want to show you I'm going to go real quick on double checking your policy limits. I'm going to go through a little exercise on how much you've been paid. We're going to talk about getting estimates, extended replacement cost coverage, ALE, code upgrades, depreciation, and then dispute resolution options. Okay, so you guys, it's been a couple years, so you know what your declarations is. This is just our standard slide for that. But that's where you go to look for your coverage limits. Okay, I've got some samples here, and I just wanted to show you that the purpose of this sample is to show you that there's differences in your declarations page in terms of knowing whether you have certain coverages. Okay, the really important coverages that I get a lot of questions on are extended replacement cost and the code upgrade coverage. This particular policy declarations, and I think this is Liberty Mutual, but this is actually an Oregon policy, but it's all the same. This is an example of one where you can see the extended replacement cost coverage. You've got an extra 50% limit here. And then down here, you can see the ordinance and law coverage, but you can't see the amount, okay? I just wanted to give you guys some examples of different declarations page. This is a State Farm, a little snippet of declaration here. Really easy to see. State Farm calls their extended replacement cost increased dwelling coverage, option ID. This says you have the option and gives a dollar amount. I like this. Ordinance or law, you've got 25% and the dollar amount. So that's a really clear one. This one, these are just all different ones. This one is, it's got something about replacement cost here, and you see if you've been charged a premium, that might let you know that you probably have it. And then this one here, you just can't tell, okay? So what I want to do is kind of show you how to keep track of your claim payments and make sure that you've been paid everything that you are owed, okay? If you go to this URL, or if you go to our website, which is uphelp.org, and I typed in, well, we cut it off. There's a little over on this side over here, a little magnifying glass. You can type in accounting spreadsheet, which I did earlier today. You're going to get this. This is a handy dandy little guide. You do have to unprotect it, I learned today. So just do that. So this is going to be an example. This is a AAA policy. This is going to be our example for today. And so what I wanted to do was take an actual policy for an actual house that burned, and then show you the declarations page, show you the estimate, and then show you how I kept track of it. Okay, so like this one, you've got your coverage A dwelling, 226,500. You've got your other structures, personal property, loss of use. If you'll see down here, you have no idea whether or not they have extended replacement coverage or code upgrade coverage. Okay, so this particular declarations page doesn't show it. It tells you you don't have flood or earthquake, but doesn't show it. So I had to go into the policy and I had to look it up. Okay, so sometimes you have to do that. This is the same policy that matches that declarations page from a AAA policy, 25%, but this policy, it doesn't increase the limit, okay? Some policies, your building code upgrade increases your limit, and some policies it doesn't. It's really important to know. Luckily, more policies than fewer do give you a little extra coverage. There's also some new laws going forward that they have to be a little bit more clear. Okay. On the extended replacement coverage, this is another example of, they call them different things. Okay. Like I showed you, the State Farm was option ID for increased dwelling. This one's limited home replacement cost coverage. This is AAA. And then we looked here, and here we found the percentage. Okay, so we have another 50%. So what I did is I took, and this is really handy, I just took straight from the declarations page right along here, all the coverages. Okay, so I've got your base coverage, you've got your extended replacement coverage, your other structures, your personal property, your loss of use, your ordinance or law, which I left blank here because it's all part of their dwelling A. Debris removal. There's a little asterisk beside debris removal because some policies add debris removal to dwelling, other structures, personal property, and some add it to trees and shrubs. So I've got a little note to add a modifier to this, but at this point you have to, if you have 5% extra, this is that 5% extra additional coverage. If you have that and you use this sheet right now, you have to add it all together if you have more. Okay, and then there's trees, shrubs, and plants. This line here is to keep track of your replacement cost estimates. Okay, so you can do it a couple ways. You can put it either the whole amount right here. I divided it up. So what I did, the estimate, and I'll show you, the thing was like $450 something thousand. I put the amount up to the policy limit here and then put the overflow here. You can kind of do it however you feel comfortable. Your other structures bid, your property bid, your loss of use is actual, your ordinance or law bid, your debris removal bid, and your trees, shrubs, and plants bids. So that's where you can kind of keep track of your bids. It'll calculate for you, and then your claim payments can go in here. Okay, you just enter the payments. I entered all these are actual payments for an actual claim. And when you do it this way, you can see where you have money left. So in this case, whoopsie, hold on, I don't know why it's doing it. In this case, they've paid all of the coverage A. They've paid some of the extended replacement coverage. They've paid all of the other structures, all of the personal property. Loss of use, they still have some available. Ordinance or law doesn't work here. They're holding the debris removal on this one for the consolidated debris removal program. And then your trees, shrubs, and plants. So these people here have another almost $100,000 that they can collect for different things. Okay, and I want to show you where you can find what. And the other thing you should do is you should double check. So when you get your payments, you should double check the estimates and make sure that these are your exactimate estimates. This is your summary for the dwelling. I didn't put them all in here just because of time and effort, but you've got one for dwelling. You've got other structures, okay, and all of them going down the line. So it's really good when you get your insurance company bid and you've got that final number to cross-check it with the payments. You would not believe how many times people say, hey, I don't know, have I been paid? And I look it up for them and it's not added up correctly. In fact, as I was doing this today, I found an error on a claim. So keep checking. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do on that. Take a breath. We're going to move into the sort of meat of this, and unless anybody has any questions on what I just went over. Do you see any questions on that topic, Elise?
No, I don't.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so one of the things that's really, a good thing about being in California is that we do have, and I know it's hard to imagine, but we have some of the best insurance consumer protections in the United States. We have a really, I think, well-written fair claims practices regulations. We have 2051.5, okay, 2051.5, which was luckily modified. It was clarified actually in 2018. So before most of your fires, whoopsie, and it hits all these areas: replacement cost, extended replacement cost, additional living expenses, code upgrades, and whether you can buy or rebuild, okay? The main thing about 2051.5 is it means the amount that you're owed is the cost to rebuild the home you lost, plus code upgrades, if you have that additional coverage, up to the policy limits, okay? So a lot of people who I talk to who are down the line now are still here because their insurance company paid them all their coverage A, all their contents, all their treaties, all of that, but didn't pay them extended coverage or code upgrade coverage, okay, with the position that those costs need to be incurred before they're paid. And in a lot of cases, the people were very happy because they're like, look, my insurance company paid me out. They assured me that I would get more money when I rebuild or buy a new place, but they didn't agree on how much their old house would cost to rebuild, okay? And so say they went out and bought a new house that's way over the policy limits, and then the insurance company's like, wait, you didn't buy a house with like, kind, and quality, or we're not going to move your code upgrades. So what happens is the stall happens at kind of the end. So I'm not sure if any of you are in that position, but I do talk to a lot of people. So really, you need to get an estimate in a lot of cases to rebuild, okay? This is the actual code. This was in force September 21st, 2018. So if your fire was after that, this applies. This is the part that says you can relocate and take your extended replacement cost coverage and your code upgrade coverage with you to a new house, okay? So we'll talk about that a little. This is your friend. So buying versus rebuilding, and I know I'm going really quickly, but we do have a lot of slides. So buying versus rebuilding, we have a webinar that's entirely on this subject, and I have the link to it at the end of this webinar. If you're thinking about buying instead of rebuilding, I would really recommend that you watch it, because it goes really in depth of the things that apply when you choose to do that. The beginning process, and I think it's counterintuitive for a lot of people, it's really the same. Whether you're going to rebuild your house at the same place, rebuild it someplace else, or buy another house, the beginning of your claim should have been identical with this. And so any of you who have been to my webinars, I just say this over and over and over again. The most important thing: how much would it have cost to rebuild the home you lost, okay? Even if you have no intention of ever rebuilding it, okay? And then if you have code upgrade coverage, you probably need a code bid too. Also for the house you lost, not the house that you're buying, okay? The only time you wouldn't need another estimate is if you were paid your full policy limits by your insurance company or promised. Okay, so here we go. This is my same mantra. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this slide. We have another webinar. We have a lot of them. And it's aiming for this agreed upon scope of loss, okay? And one of the things that's really important, also counterintuitive, is making sure that you correct your insurance company's estimate, okay? And that seems weird. A lot of people, get the estimate, go to the back of the estimate, look at the amount of money, and then say, oh my goodness, I can't. Either they're happy or they're sad, without taking too much time to make sure that it's correct. Now, I know those estimates are really complicated. They're, you know, some of them are 100 pages long. But if you start looking at them, most of them are broken down room by room. They really should be broken down room by room. I tell people not to worry too much about things like foundations and framing and site preparation and stuff like that. Just go to the rooms and make sure, you know, the dimensions are roughly the same, the ceiling height is right. And, you know, I have wood floor in here, so make sure you have wood floor in there instead of, you know, vinyl or something like that. Make sure that it's right. And the reason that you need to do that is when you go, because your insurance company's estimate is too low, when you go to get an estimate, you send it to them, they're going to compare the two. They don't really have anything else except that estimate. It's really hard to write an estimate on a house that's completely gone. They have to really spend some time with you to interview you in depth and find out, you know, what kind of faucets did you have? You know, what kind of doors did you have? You know, all these questions are really important, but when they send in an estimate, they're going to look at it and they're going to be like, well, this house doesn't bear any resemblance to the house in our estimate. So it kind of starts a whole new set of problems. So if you fix their estimate so that it actually reflects your house, the first thing that'll happen is you'll see the price should adjust a little bit, and then it'll give them a base to compare to your contractor's estimate. Okay, so the second point on this is make sure that the contractor's estimator or you know, they're paid estimators as well, but make sure that the one you get is for the home you lost and not the home you want. Okay, you are allowed to take your insurance money and buy or rebuild. You can do whatever you want. You can build a mansion, you can build a smaller house. There's a few caveats on that, but you don't, I see some people still being told by their adjusters that they have to replace their home with like, kind, and quality. That is not true. The like, kind, and quality comes, it's in the loss settlement provision of most of the policies, but it is what they owe you. So they owe you for the like, kind, and quality of what you lost. What you do with that is up to you. So if you had, like, say you had a big house, you know, lots of square feet, but it was maybe sort of standard grade, and now you want to build a smaller house, say half the size, but you want to, you know, trick it out. Totally allowed to do that. You can just do whatever you want on that. Okay, so don't let them tell you that you can't. One of the things I want to push is and we'll talk about, you know, estimates in a bit, but if you have a difference between your estimate and the insurance company's estimate, really try to see if you can meet with an adjuster. Ask if you can meet with an experienced adjuster with your contractor. You sit down, face-to-face, human. It's harder to do these days because a lot of adjusters, you know, are desk adjusters in different states, but ask. If you can get it, you'll find it makes everything really smooth because you can talk back and forth. The contractor can tell the adjuster why his roof estimate is twice as expensive. And that, which leads us to the next, make sure that your contractor and can stand behind their estimates with their subcontractor bids and how they got to their numbers. And I know it's a pain and a lot of contractors don't like to do it, but you really need that, okay? And you need to, before the meeting, you need to identify the areas where the insurance company estimate and your contractor's estimate differs and try to figure out why, okay? Again, wait, before that, we do have, if you want to see that, go into our uphelp.org/events and look for a webinar called Scoop on Scope. We've got a couple of them in there. Whoopsie. Yeah.
I just wanted to go back and reiterate a point. It's a question that we have from Sandra W. It's about the extended coverage clause in her policy. She writes, as a campfire survivor, I'm only 80% complete with building my house. I have an extended coverage clause in my homeowner's policy that I have not opted out of. How do I access the coverage so that I can finish my house?
Oh, okay.
The money, right?
Yeah, if you've spent the money, send them in everything you've spent to date, and that should release that coverage. They should have, hopefully, one of the things I'm seeing is that a lot of them didn't really explain how to do that, but you should, if you have gone over your coverage A limit and what you've spent has gone into that extended coverage, you should be able to just show your adjuster and have your contractor prepare sort of a list of what's been completed and how much you've paid, send it in, and they should release that money. Good question. Good question. Okay, for those of you who don't have a contractor's estimate, there are people out there. This is our professional help directory from uphelp.org. If you click on professional help directory, you can sort by the state, by what you want as a loss estimator or appraiser. And these three sponsors of ours all provide estimates that go regularly through the insurance companies. They all do exactimate estimates. Your contractor, if you have your own contractor, does not have to do an exactimate estimate. The only thing you really have to do is have them provide enough detail that your adjuster can compare, like how much there's a trade summary breakdown at the end of the exactimate estimates, and your contractor should have something similar so they know, okay, he's paying this much for framing, this much for appliances, this much for wood flooring, you know, all of that. They just need to be able to find out how much you're spending on each of those. But if you need somebody, you can go here. Most of them charge about 1.5%. I think BW is a fixed price. I'm not sure what it is right now, but so you also need to make sure, like, the difference that you have between what you've been paid and what your policy limits are, okay? And if you think they owe you more, make sure that it's worth your while. You know, if you have, you know, $4,000 to collect and your estimate's going to cost $5,000, then I would look for a different alternative. But if you have $100,000 or $50,000 to collect, $5,000 is a great amount of money to spend to release that money. These guys are all very nice. They'll talk to you. They'll tell you if, you know, they think you don't need it. So I encourage you to use that if you need to. Okay, so now you have your insurance company's estimate. You have your estimate, and nothing's happening. I also talk to a lot of people about this. And I apologize right now for the slide, but this is a super important slide. And I want to walk you through it a little bit, okay? Because this is what you'll go to if you're in this situation. If you Google California Fair Claims Settlement Practices Act, the first thing that should come up is the Department of Insurance website with the regulations. So use the regulations from the website. This is 2695.9D, okay? And there's a couple of really important things in here that I want to highlight. If losses are settled on the basis of a written scope and or estimate, okay, prepared by, and this is the key, or for the insurer. So a lot of times you'll see that the insurance company will just hire somebody to write an estimate, and they'll tell you, hey, you know, whoopsie, sorry, it keeps jumping. We got a contractor's bid, that's our price. Your answer is no, because it says by or for the insurer. So if they've hired somebody to write an estimate, they're still in this regulation, okay? They have to give you a copy of it. They have to use reasonable you know, care to make sure that it's workmanlike standards to put your property back in the condition prior to the loss using local prices. Okay, then if the claimant, that's you, subsequently contends based on a written estimate, which he or she obtains, that the necessary repairs will exceed the estimate prepared by or for the insurer shall. There's only 3 options here, you guys. It doesn't say the insurer can go out and get a contractor's estimate and just stand on it, okay? They can't. They've got a lot of contractors they work with. That's not one of the 3 options. There's 3 options. First is pay the difference between their estimate and your estimate. You should always say that you'll accept that, okay? Number two, if requested by the claimant, so that's you. So 2 is only at your option. Okay, really important to know. Promptly provide the claimant with the name of at least one repair individual that will make the repairs for the amount of the written estimate. Okay. I used to tell people not to do this. However, there's a huge contractor shortage, and the reason that I used to tell people not to do it is because I had talked to 2 different people, like back to back, who had, basically $100,000 claims. They couldn't find anybody to do the work. So finally they just got sick and tired of, trying to find somebody to do the work for $50,000, which was the insurance company's estimate. It was, both of the claims were about the same amount. So they said, great, you know what? I'm tired of this. Send me a contractor who will do the repairs for the amount of the estimate. So they did. They sent a contractor out. The policyholder, if you do this, make sure that every estimate comes to you. What happened is both of the contractors immediately doubled their prices. They had already given the insurance company $50,000 estimates, and when they were called upon to actually do the work, they doubled their prices. So make sure that you're aware that that might happen, and if that happens and you have somebody else that you'd rather use, then just go straight for it, okay? So just be aware. And then third, and this is the most common, and this is the most commonly done incorrectly, okay? Reasonably adjust any written estimate prepared by the repair individual of the insured's choice and provide a copy of the adjusted estimate to the claimant, okay? So a lot of times the adjuster will go through your estimate, they'll make a few changes to theirs, they'll send you a couple $1,000 and go on their way. When it says reasonably adjust, they have to go through every line of the estimate that doesn't match, okay? So anything that is higher in your estimate than in their estimate, they can't just ignore it. And you'll see that happen a lot. They actually have to do something about it. Adjusting means figuring out what the actual, if you have a dispute, they need to call some people, find out if, what is the going price in the area for that particular thing. They need to work with your contractor. They need to do something to try to reconcile that. So if they say, hey, your roof is at $30,000 and our roof is at $20,000, they can't just say yours is too high and stop. They have to say, look, we talked to a couple of subcontractors and here they are, they have to be able to back it up. And they say, that you can do it. Doing that is different than just having one contractor who says, I'll do it for their price. Okay. So it's really important. And every time they send you your, repair estimate back without everything reconciled, you just keep sending it back to them. Make a copy of this and put it in every email because it is something that needs to happen. Okay. Do we have any questions in that area so far? Are we good?
I think we're good.
Okay. So if your loss happened, this is for Kincaid people or some Southern California fires that happened after January 1st, 2019. I just wanted to pop this in. This is where you can, if you lost some other structures and you need to use that other structure coverage to rebuild your primary home because you're underinsured, you can do that, and they can't require you to replace that other structure, and you can use contents too. Okay, so that's just good to know. Okay, so a lot of you are probably asking, what if I need more time? I keep forgetting to add the prelude to this, but what it says, the part that I cut off there, is that you have 36 months to collect all your benefits, okay, if you're part of a declared disaster. So you guys, most of you should be okay. If you start to worry, this is the part that's going to get you more time, okay? You get 1 or more additional extensions of 6 months for good cause if you're trying to rebuild, but the circumstances are beyond your control. This is kind of like the the ALE language. The difference is I don't see a lot of insurer pushback on this. Most of the people make sure you ask. The moral to the story is ask and get the answer in writing so that you feel comfortable. But I haven't heard from many people where the insurance company is saying, no, you're going to lose all the money that we still have if you don't, finish by a certain date. So if you need, this is $26.95. I think it's you can look. Okay. I'm sorry, it's 2651.5. So if this is regarding actual cash value, and Sandra, I see your hand raised. I'm going to do the live questions at the end. So go ahead and keep it raised. And I'll just talk to you at the end. I want to get through our slides and then we'll take all the questions. Okay, yeah, you guys can go ahead and raise your hands. This is the part of the insurance code that talks about actual cash value and replacement costs. Basically says you're owed ACV until the property is repaired, rebuilt, and replaced. They are allowed to use, to reasonably depreciate property. And then once the property is repaired, rebuilt, or replaced, the insurer shall pay the difference between the actual cash value made and the full replacement cost, reasonably paid to replace the damaged property up to the limit stated in the policy. So if you are rebuilding a similar house, this part about reasonably paid to replace the damaged property, if you're rebuilding a substantially similar house in the same place and you end up going over their estimate, but you still have room in your policy, you can turn in what you actually paid and request that they pay that. And they really kind of need to. They might adjust it a little bit for upgrades, but you can adjust it. If you downgraded somewhere else, you can do that. So that's important to know. Okay. And this is just an example of what the policy language says, okay, about actual cash value and so forth. Okay. Each policy is different, so you might want to read that part. Okay, let's talk a little bit about depreciation. Depreciation is the loss in value for an item. And it says personal property here, but this also applies to the building. For the building items, they can only depreciate materials. You cannot depreciate labor and only things that wear out. Okay, so in your building, generally drywall framing is not depreciated because it lasts, a couple hundred years. Only things that wear out in your house can be depreciated, like flooring, paint, roofing materials, those things. Okay, so the same for personal property. Okay, and I hear a lot of complaints about excessive depreciation on personal property. So the important thing is that it's not only the age and life expectancy. I see some insurers that just put in the age, they put in the life expectancy, and that's that. You also get to account for the condition of the product, of the item. How much wear and tear is there? Okay, and so this is highly negotiable. And your insurance may hold back the depreciation until you replace it. And it matters because if they depreciate your items too much, it's tough coming up with the cash to buy replacement items. Also, you're owed the actual cash value. What was that piece worth if you were going to go sell it? Because you might not replace everything, or you might choose to take that ACV from your dining room table and put it into, a sofa or something else, which you're totally allowed to do. Okay. This is just a slide talking about the difference between, the 5-year-old sofa bought the same day, and how it's used is going to make it different, okay. So it's a common problem. Don't accept excessive depreciation of your property by the insurance company. There are some depreciation guides out there. It's been well documented that insurance companies are not allowed to use depreciation guides as a, solid. They can use them as a rule, but they can't use it as a solid because of that condition factor. Okay. Again, depreciation is highly negotiable. If you feel certain items have been excessively depreciated, just go back and say, okay, Item 17, it's a dining room table. Here's why I think you applied too much, okay? And make your case by case. If they do a fixed percentage, it's that, you can challenge this by negotiating a lower percentage, but technically they are not allowed to apply a fixed percentage. It is not allowed. You have to go item by item, okay? So you can make a specific request for what you feel like is a fair resolution, have some documentation, and there's different things. We'll talk about all of these dispute resolution items as we go farther. Okay, if we don't have any depreciation questions, we will go on to ALE. This is just a reminder, okay, about most ALE is set up this way. Loss insured, okay, you've had a fire, causes the residence premises, your house, to become uninhabitable, you are owed the increased cost to maintain your standard of living, okay? Really, really important. Increased cost to maintain your standard of living. Whoa, whoopsie. Okay, sorry, I had a little, I put the slide in the wrong place. So here is the language on ALE, okay? So it has to be a minimum of 24 months from the inception of the loss, okay? This part, but shall be subject to other policy provisions, is the part that's gonna let them, and I'll get to that, let them ask you for what you're doing, but we'll get to that. So really important, an insurer shall grant, okay? Legally, the word shall means something totally different than may, okay? And any of you out there with State Farm's endorsement says may. I think it should be changed. It needs to say shall to match the statute. May implies that they may or may not. Shall doesn't imply that. So up to 12 months for a total of 36 months if you as an insured is acting in good faith with reasonable diligence and you encounter a delay or delays in the reconstruction processes that are the results of circumstances beyond the control of the insured. Okay, so I got one question from Cece, who said that her insurance, is the insurance company allowed to suspend loss of use with stipulations for you to jump through, where they're going to like stop the ALE and then won't reinstate it until she gets plans and permits, or he, I'm sorry. So no, that is not allowed. And if you read this, so what they're doing, and I've seen 2 or 3 in the last couple of days, where the insurance companies are saying, look, if you don't have your architect's plans and your permit issued, we're cutting you off ALE until those get done. Okay, and that's what CC was saying here too. So that's not what's intended by this, because especially, and if any of you are experiencing this in Paradise, and you get that, there's a weekly email that I get that talks about, it comes from the town of Paradise, it talks about how many homes were burned, how many permits have been issued, how many houses have been completed. It is still very low. And trust me, it is not because people don't want to rebuild. It's just because of the labor shortage, of the materials prices, of the, getting your place surveyed and all these things. So what I saw yesterday was them saying, oh, well, it says it has to be construction delays. And if you're not doing construction, then, this doesn't apply. Well, it says right here, permit delays, okay? Lack of construction materials, lack of contractors. So do not let them do that. And I would push back and push back hard. Don't let them get away with it. Go to the DOI. The other thing that people, and this is missing, I'm just going to tell you from the State Farm endorsement, additional extensions of 6 months. That's after your 36 months, guys, shall be provided to policyholders for good cause. So the moral to this story is you need to, and I'll get to how we do it, but you need to keep moving forward. You need to do your best show what you're doing, but they shall be provided. Okay. Very important. Okay. So a lot of people think it's automatic that they get, 24 or 36 months automatically. You do not. Okay. That little part of the code, which I showed you, subject to other policy provisions, is what allows them to use the language. And most of the language is the shortest time required to rebuild, replace, or for your household to settle elsewhere. Okay, so they are entitled to ask what you're doing. So, I mean, you guys are pretty far down the road. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, and I know it will probably not be happy to some of you, but I think by now, especially if you're the Paradise Fire from November of 2018, I think you need to make up your mind. I understand that there's a lot of things that go into deciding, but it's been 2.5 years. Paradise is where it is. You can kind of expect it to keep on its current trajectory, and you're going to run out of time if you don't decide now. Okay, so hopefully most of you have decided. One of the things, if you do decide to buy a place somewhere else, just be ready when you tell them you're going to do that, be ready to start looking, because most of them will put a lot of pressure on you to try to find a replacement house, which is also hard right now. Right now, the housing market's really tough. So in most of the cases, you need to show you're acting with reasonable diligence in buying or rebuilding. Keep a diary. Most of them are going to check in with you monthly, but don't let them cut you off unless you're doing nothing. The other thing that I'm going to say that's a little bit harsh, but there's no other real way to say it, is that they might care, but they are not going to extend your ALE because of health challenges, because of personal situations. I've had some people write to me, they've had family members pass away. The whole COVID is a reasonable delay, which is pretty much not going to fly too much, but that's a reasonable delay. But in terms of people working a lot because their job has, moved because of the different circumstances, those things are not in the code. So as much as it is hard, these are the things you need to stick with: construction permit delays, construction materials, contractors, those type of things. And try to keep, and I understand a lot of personal things happen, but try to keep those out of that, out of the mix. Okay. Reasonable progress. What issues have you encountered? It's not the same for everybody. Be prepared to do it monthly. How does buying change the situation? Shopping is a whole different thing. You can try to negotiate a timeline and ask for a cash out if you think you can do it within the amount. It's always a gamble. We always say it doesn't hurt to ask. So ask away and see what they say. So these are some examples. Okay. We've talked about these. This one's really important. How long did it take your carrier to pay? How long did it take you? And in fact, I should rewrite this slide. How long did it take the carrier and you to agree to the replacement cost of your home? Okay. Not just coverage A benefits, but the total replacement cost of your home. Because until you have that agreement of saying, okay, here's your coverage A, regardless of whether they pay your extended replacement cost now or later, either way, if you don't know the total amount that you're owed, how can you make an informed decision on what you're going to do, whether you're going to rebuild or buy or all of that? So as far as I'm concerned, the ALE can't really start ticking, in terms of rebuilding until you have reached that agreement. Let me make a note to fix that slide. So that's a really big one. So if it took you, a year before you got an agreement with them over the estimate, then that's when things start. They can't just, take a year to negotiate the claim and then expect you to rebuild the house in less time. Okay. Documentation is key. They are entitled to it. Be clear, make all your requests in writing, keep a diary. We have this, if you, a little progress tracker. If you write to us at info@uphelp.org, we'll send you a copy. It's just a simple Excel. You can also write it on a sheet of paper. You can just scribble it down. One of the things that I think needs to be made clear is that you should write every single thing you do that moves you forward. If you wake up in the middle of the night and you, look on Zillow for houses to buy, write that down. If you talk to your friend who's a realtor about housing prices, write that down. If you leave a message for an architect who doesn't pick up the phone, write it down anyway. Every single second that you spend doing that will be good. And then just send this in to them every month, even if it's scribbled on a piece of paper. Don't worry about that. Okay. If the insurance company starts pushing back, remind them that there's a Department of Insurance General Counsel letter that was issued, and it talks about the fact that they say they shall be paying. Okay, if you have delays. Okay, so the DOI agrees with this. Oopsie. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about debris removal. So debris removal, I get a lot of questions about this. It's important that a lot of times debris removal is included in your coverage A. And some people call me panicking saying there's all this debris removal in my coverage A estimate. I want to get it out of there, and so forth. It doesn't really much matter. As long as they pay you your limits, it doesn't really much matter. But the point is that it's included in coverage A until you reach your coverage A limit, and then the 5% opens up, okay? And when that 5% opens up, they should move that 5% from your coverage A to your debris, so it gives you a little bit more room in your coverage A, okay? You can do whatever. You guys have all done your debris removal, but know that a lot of you who have done the county consolidated debris removal program, some of you have had it withheld and some of you have been paid already. So it's really important to know where you are on that, okay? And then work with your county on what you owe them. The bills in Paradise, I know, are in now, so some of you may have received them. Okay, this is just sample debris removal language. The point of this is I get a lot of questions about trees. Know that the tree, and I've got a slide on trees, a lot of these, they do not, see right here, this additional amount of insurance does not apply to additional coverage trees, shrubs, or plants. I know a lot of you have a lot of trees, and I know a lot of you are struggling to have them removed from your property, but the debris removal is a different thing, okay? Trees, plants, and shrubs, which is generally 5%, although I saw one that was like 40% the other day. So read your policy. It covers everything to do with them. It covers the fact that you lost those plants. It covers the removal of those plants. It covers the debris removal of those plants, and that's it. So unfortunately, some of you are going to be really caught out with that. And I know that Paradise has a tree program, but it's really limited. So I think it's too bad, because we're seeing more and more people who lose a lot in this area. And really the fact of the matter is these are homeowners policies, and they were never really intended for these, rural properties that they're insuring these days. Okay, so we're going to talk now about leverage and about getting your claim handled. Keep in mind that you are a disaster survivor. You've gone through everything. Your records are gone. You've lost all your possessions. That's a personal leverage that you can use if you have to move on. These are the California legal and political leverage that you can use to help you, okay? The California Fair Claims Settlement Practices Regulations, it's California CR 2695. We talked about that. Those are linked to the Unfair Claims Practices Act, which is it's actually code 790.03. That lists 16. If you go to 790.03H, that lists 16 different activities that are considered unfair claims practices. Failure to investigate, failure to communicate promptly. They have to, if you ask, and this is a really important one. I see a lot of people who want to know what they've been paid. 790.03H says that if you request it, they have to provide you breakdown of what was paid under each coverage. Okay, so that's a really important one to know. There's also California case law on bad faith. Your insurance company has a duty of good faith and fair dealing, to be reasonable, to investigate, to settle fairly, to pay the undisputed amounts promptly, and to keep your interests even with theirs, okay? And technically, their adjuster and the whole insurance company has to keep your interest even with their interest. The other thing to consider is media exposure. There's been a lot of legislation that really started after the 2017 North Bay fires. Have really kind of helped. Unfortunately, it doesn't always help you guys, but it helps in the long run. So remember the media, they're still interested in you guys. And also surveys. If you get surveys, United Policyholders uses the surveys when we talk to the media. When the media comes to us a lot, they talk to Amy all the time about, what are you seeing? What are you seeing as problems? So if you report it to us, we can report it to the Department of Insurance. We can report it to the media. We can talk to your legislators about what, we always submit each legislative session. We always submit a proposal to try to make things a little bit better. We don't always get our legislation in there, but it really does help. We have, if you go to uphelp.org/samples, we have a lot of sample letters, and we have, first thing is make sure you put everything in writing. Okay, this is a very common scenario that we see where you've turned in your contractor's estimate and they just don't do anything. Just write to them. Send me an update. I sent my contractor's estimate on this date for this amount. There's an X amount of dollar difference. Send it to me. Okay, within this says within 2 weeks. You can still, whoopsie, going the wrong way. You can ask them to do it, any amount you want. I paid for extended replacement cost and code upgrade coverage. I'm still underinsured. I look forward to receiving all of my benefits. Okay, so that's just a sample letter, and we will post this on our website, this thing, so you can refer back to it later. You don't have to scramble. Yeah, also, so one of the things, and I have it at the end, when you turn in your contractor's estimate, the regulations require, they have 40 days to pay or deny that additional claim. Every time you turn something in, they've got 40 days. I don't care if it's a $20 receipt for a new doorknob. They've got 40 days to pay it or deny it. If they don't pay it or deny it, they have to write to you. And I have another slide on this, but this is really important. I saw somebody wrote in the other day and said, I turned it in 5 months ago, and they said they're looking at it. Well, that's not allowed. They have to, tell you what they need in order to make a decision, how much time they estimate it might take, all of those things, and they need to write you every 30 days. Okay. Okay. These are still document unreasonable delays, and I'll talk to you about the time limits other than that, the 15 days. Clearly explain how much they still owe you and why you're entitled to them. Document the rotating adjusters, okay, and why it's a problem. There is a new law out there that says, and it will apply to you guys now because your claim is still ongoing. If you have the third adjuster in 6 months, you're entitled to a written status report a single point of contact for the remainder of your claim. And that single point of contact has to allow you to be transferred to their supervisor directly, so that if you have any questions. So if any of you have that, know that that's your right now. Okay. Go up the chain of command and be very specific. Okay. If you're unable to resolve the issue with your adjuster, go above their head. I know a lot of you have done this. I'm probably preaching to the choir, but the higher you go, the greater your chances of success are in resolving the dispute. Okay. Again, I talked about this earlier. Try to meet in person with your adjuster and your contractor. I can't even tell you how beneficial this could be. A lot of times, just looking somebody in the face and talking to them about the issues you're having brings it down to a really human level, and will get you farther along. Okay, so these are the things that are kind of the big 6 issues we see people running into problems with. Underinsurance continues to be a huge thing. The valuation disputes, the home inventory, documentation for your home inventory. I don't know. I haven't received a ton of those lately. I did receive one the other day. The issues in buying versus rebuilding, and then delays. Okay. So what do you do? So what we did, we made this little table. These are the options that are available to you if you've reached an impasse. Okay. You can continue to negotiate on anything. Okay. Underinsurance, and we do have a link to our underinsurance webinar at the end of this. It's probably the toughest one. There's a lot of things. The law in California still protects the brokers and agents to a large extent, and it says, it's your responsibility as a homeowner to choose your coverage and coverage limits. So there's only really a few situations where you're going to get very far yourself on an underinsurance claim. That being said, it used to be almost impossible. And now we're seeing people who are able to do it themselves, able to negotiate and say, look, my agent knew that I had this. I heard one of our lawyers the other day was talking about how they had this giant backyard with a swimming pool and an outdoor kitchen, and it was all under the 10% dwelling extension. And they were really shocked when they lost it all. And they're like, well, our agent should have known. And they're like, well, why? Well, he jogged past the house every day and waved to them and talked to them over the fence and saw it. And they came to the housewarming party and the birthday party. So the agent was well aware of the thing and never even, so kind of got off the track there. Mediation is another thing we'll talk a little bit about in mediation. It's really good when you're on just a pricing dispute. Evaluation dispute is good. Conflicting information. If you're getting conflicting information from adjusters, this is a good one to take to mediation. I'll talk about that in a minute. Appraisal. This is policy appraisal, which differs from real estate appraisal. And I'll talk about that. You can file an attorney, and then all of these, I really encourage all of you, if you're having any problems, to file a complaint with the California Department of Insurance. There's various amounts of actual assistance. I'm a little unclear on how much assistance they're giving these days personally, but I do feel very confident that they're consolidating all of the complaints that they get, and they're looking at them and they're using them to determine whether they need to do market conduct surveys, whether they need to go in and audit an insurance company for these practices. So I think that there's never a wasted DOI complaint. Just, I'm going to say, don't get your hopes up too high, because I'm hearing various levels of actual assistance. So. But it does boost your leverage at the very least. It does make the insurance company do a ton of work, if that makes you feel better at all. You can go online and file your report online. You can call their number. And we see, yeah, pretty low. Even 54% of our people surveyed say they had a problem with their insurance company, but only 25% had filed a formal complaint with the DOI. So if you have any problem, and I'm thinking you probably do if you're here, make sure the DOI knows about it. Okay. The other thing is, and I'll do this before I talk about mediation, but the Department of Insurance has a, it's a little bit misleading, residential property, but this is a disaster mediation program. Okay. And if you Google California Department of Insurance mediation program, a link to this brochure will come up, and it'll talk about the things that you can take to mediation. You have to file a complaint first. You have to allow the insurance company a certain amount of time, I think it's 21 days, to try to resolve the dispute. And if they can't, you can request mediation. It says in the code that the Department of Insurance then has to offer it to you, but I haven't seen it being offered. So I'm now telling people to go and ask for it. It's free, okay? It's free, and the insurance company is compelled to attend. Okay, so that is good news for you. If you don't have a lawyer, they can't bring a lawyer. So it's something where if you feel like you feel pretty good going up against, your insurance company, if you want a lawyer, you can bring a lawyer, but it is a nice low cost way to try to get these cases resolved. So for those of you, just a little background on mediation. Mediation is informal, it's voluntary, it's non-binding. Okay, so in order for any agreement, in order for mediation to settle a claim, both parties have to agree. And really, you guys, it's used all the time. Mediation, I was in litigation for many years with State Farm, and mediation probably settled 75% of the cases that went to or even more that went to a lawsuit. So it's a very good process, and both sides end up agreeing, and you have a dispute. It can be fast, it can be inexpensive, especially if you use the DOI. But you have to prepare for it. You have to have your numbers ready. You have to know what's happening. It's inexpensive. If you go, you can also go private mediation, but they're not compelled to attend. But you can, pay a mediator. It's a little bit more expensive than a few $1,000s. You're never compelled to take a verdict like a lawsuit would do. And it's a nice, efficient way of getting the dispute behind you. A lot of times, it educates both sides about the strengths and weaknesses of their position. I had the opportunity to go with one of the 2017 Tubbs survivors to a mediation, and we got there, and it seems so clear that the policyholder's position was absolutely correct reading the policy, and it turned out that they were reading two different policies with the same number, just a different date on the policy. Another reason why you really have to double check your policy form numbers and dates. And they were actually, AAA was actually correct in their argument based on the policy they were looking at, and the policyholder was correct based upon the policy she was looking at. So they did end up later settling the claim. So, okay. The cons is unless they're compelled through the DOI, and even when they go to the DOI, I heard from the DOI in one case that I was following, where it was a code upgrade. The DOI said, look, you owe the code upgrade on the replacement house. The insurance company said no. The DOI can't really sue them. So the policyholder compelled the mediation, and the insurance company said, well, we'll attend because we have to, but we're not bringing any money. So, you kind of need to know what's going to happen. That's one of the cons. And there's some, if you're thinking about hiring an attorney, talk to the attorney first before going to the mediation. If you want to try it yourself, really, you don't have a ton to lose. So, okay. Time and a little bit of money. Okay, so insurance appraisal is a dispute only over money. So say you agree on the scope of the house. You both agree that here is the house that we want to rebuild. So the only difference is basically pricing. they can do a little bit of scoping, but it's better to just do price and value. And then what happens is that each side, it costs a little bit of money. Each side hires their own appraiser. There's all sorts of people who do this. See, so this is a nice little slide on this. Dispute over the value and extent of insured loss. Each person picks an appraiser, and the two appraisers pick an umpire neutral. They should all be neutral. The appraisers try to, and they can't be the people who are adjusting the claim. That's a note on there. No coverage disputes also. So the two umpires write their estimates. Usually they start from scratch, write an estimate of their own. They get together, they compare their estimates. They try to get as close as they can. And then if they cannot agree, sometimes they agree and they don't even have to use the umpire. I've been an umpire in a situation where I didn't do any work because they ended up figuring it out themselves. So, but if there's a difference, then the 2 out of 3, the umpire gets together and usually writes up their own opinion of what it is, sends it to the appraisers, and if one of them agrees, then it becomes a decision, okay? And the insurance company is compelled to pay it. So you've got some costs for the appraisers. Each side splits the umpire, but it is a pretty expedient way to get the job done. So it's something to consider. There is an appraisal clause. The only downside is that the insurance code now says, it's too bad, it got changed a few years back, that if it's a wildfire, if it's a disaster claim, it's not mandatory for the insurers. Okay, so we're getting close here. We're getting close to doing our questions. These are types of professional help. Licensed attorney, licensed public adjuster, licensed contractor. If you go to uphelp.org/professional help directory, go to California, you can sort for attorney, you can sort for public adjuster. We've got some contractors. I showed you the estimators. And these are all people that you can hire. The sad part of this is that if your difference between the insurance company is under $100,000, sometimes it can be a little tough to find somebody, an attorney or a public adjuster to help you. So you might be better off with a estimator. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try. You can always ask. Sometimes, things are slow, whatever, but there's a lot of work out there. Litigation, there's a lot of litigation going on, multi-plaintiff litigation, there's individual litigation, there's some lawsuits that have happened on systematic underinsurance. There's a little problem with the software that the same company owns the software that values the houses when they're underwritten, and they own Xactimate. And if you did the same house on the same day, there would be a huge gap between the two figures that they come up with. So the other thing is, if you feel you're underinsured and you feel like your agent made a mistake, talk to somebody about it. This is E&O, is errors and omissions coverage. In case, if they made an error, you might be able to make a claim under their policy for that. So I put this slide in. You guys might be wondering about your statute of limitations. You have 24 months from the date of loss for declared disasters. The clock stops. It's called tolling. The clock stops while the adjustment is happening. Unfortunately, it could be a little hard. Also, if you took a month, most of you didn't because it's a disaster, but if you took a month to turn in your claim, the clock starts for that month, then it stops while they adjust the claim. Once they close the claim, they are required to notify you at least 90 days in advance of any statutes, but some of them write to you at the beginning of the claim and tell you the statute. And so, technically that's notification. So you really need to be careful. If you think, I'd say right now, especially if you're in Paradise or Car Fire, If you think you might have a lawsuit that you want to pursue, talk to an attorney to make sure you don't miss your statute of limitations. Okay, it can be really complicated to figure out. And I will give somebody like a sort of a guess, but it's very, it's very specific. So you want to make sure. Okay. These are my last couple slides, and we'll go straight to the questions. You guys have seen this before, 15 days. So let me just keep in mind, and somebody pointed it out the other day, and I'm going to update this as well. What this regulation says is that upon receipt of communications that reasonably suggest that a reply is wanted, like if you write to them and you asking them to respond, it says they must respond immediately, but in no case more than 15 days. So we've really sort of allowed this sort of backsliding to the 15 days and using it. I mean, it is sort of the limit, but they need to respond as soon as possible. Okay, I talked about the 40 days to pay or deny. Here's the things I talked about. They need to tell you what they need to make a decision and how long, an estimate. How long is it going to take? Send a letter every 30 days. They need to tell you the reason for the delay as well. So those are important to know, and hold your feet to the fire, let them know. This is our standard, get it in writing, get it in writing, get it in writing. If you talk to somebody on the phone, get off the phone, send them an email saying, based upon our conversation, I understand X, Y, Z. If I'm misunderstanding, let me know immediately. If they don't respond, then you've got it, okay? Be professional, be concise, try to keep it, use bullet points. One of the things is a lot of these adjusters are looking at a lot of things during the day. So sometimes if they see a 5-page letter with really long paragraphs that they have to kind of sort through and find the issue, they're going to miss things, okay? Because it's just a numbers game. So if you bullet your points, or I like to number them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then when they write back, I'm like, thank you. However, you didn't answer 2 and 4. So please answer 2 and 4. So I find it much easier to do it that way. Try to avoid venting to your adjuster. Keep the paper trail. We talk about this a lot. Don't forget to follow up. Okay. So these are some webinars that we have. We also have a handy dandy, our new website has a handy dandy events page, and you can go, the top of it has the current events that are upcoming, and then below it has our past events, and you can go through there and watch them. Just make sure you're in the right state. Don't, watch a Colorado webinar or things like that. Make sure it's California. They're all labeled. But these are the one, whoopsie, hold on. These are the ones, what is going on here, that I think would really help if you're underinsured. This is really good if you want to understand your policy, maximizing ALE, buy or rebuild. And then also there's Scoop on Scope. Okay, Scoop on Scope is a good one. Okay, this is the information for the Department of Insurance. And we also have some information on dispute resolution. This is just all the resources, okay? This is a survivor to survivor forums. You can talk to other people going through the same thing. This is a relatively new thing that Val Brown from our office put together. It's really nice. It's a little bit less technical sometimes, but it's good. This is an example, okay, of our upcoming events, restoring, see, if you look right here, Colorado, Oregon, and Washington, okay, these are the dates past now, actually, here we are. But that's what it looks like. These are past events. So this is how you get to them, okay? And finally, we want to thank our funders. We are funded by grants and donations. So the California Community Foundation, the Butte Strong Fund, the North Bay Community Foundation just gave us a new grant, and Rebuild North Bay, and the Center for Disaster Philanthropy. So we thank them very much. I'm going to get out of the slideshow here and stop sharing. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we are going to take questions. We've got 7 Q&As here. I'm just going to go through them in order, and then we're going to go if people have raised hands. Sandra W. I'm Sandra W. does the cover appliances? We're doing a lot of work ourselves. Can we charge for our labor and how much? What are the requirements for? There's a lot of questions in that one question. Okay, so I'm not sure. You need to, your appliances, if most of the time the refrigerator, if it's not built in, would be contents. The things that are built in, like the stove, ovens, dishwasher, those are usually paid under the dwelling portion of the policy. Most of the time, the fridge, if you could take it with you, and the washer and dryer are contents. So doing work yourselves, yes, you are, and you can do that, but this is another example of get an agreement on how much it would cost a contractor to rebuild your house, okay? And then get that agreement first. And then if you're gonna do some labor, then carve it out, see how much you've been allowed, and then keep track of your labor and all of that, okay? There are some back and forths on the solar issue in Paradise. What happened was the solar requirements were set to go through, I think, January 1st of 2019, where they were going to require rebuilds to install solar. After the Paradise fire happened, Governor Newsom came in and said it's too much of a hardship. We're going to make it voluntary. So some of the insurance companies are taking the position that since it's voluntary, and the code wasn't required at the time of your fire, that they're not paying for it. I think if you get, but now the town of Paradise, and this is coming back to me now. Now it's my understanding that, I don't know if it's the town of Paradise or Butte County is requiring it now, that voluntary period has expired. You need to go back and read your policy on the code upgrades. If your code upgrades are tied to the date of loss or the policy period, you might not have coverage. If it's silent on the policy period, if it doesn't say that the code upgrades, it has to be, because now, and the way I understand this is that now the solar has been triggered as of January 2021. And then now it's triggered, they're saying, oh no, we're not going to pay for it. So if your policy doesn't say anything about time, then you might get coverage for it. If it's tied to time, then you might not have coverage for it. Okay, so I apologize for that. Okay, Terry, if half of your backyard patio had to be replaced, and the other half is 30 years old and is beige, and the other half at the same patio is light gray, you have a two-tone. Yes, there is a code that says the line of sight. Yes, it's called reasonably uniform appearance. So it is the California Fair Claims Settlement Practices Regulations 26, this is like a quiz, 2695.9, and it's either A or B. It's right at the top of 2695.9. It talks about reasonably uniform appearance. And I think I'm right on that. Okay, so yes, you are entitled to matching reasonably uniform. So that is not reasonably uniform. Unless your contractor did something weird and didn't try to match the beige color, okay? Okay, there's a pool in the old patio portion. It has been replastered. They put a larger pool skimmer where the clean out and the skimmer basket. Knowing my adjuster, he will claim that alterations were made in the existing patio, making the uniformity void. No, I don't think so. I think that if your pool had to be replastered because of the fire, and because of that, you had to change your skimmer and the basket, then that's all part of it. Okay, that's how I would approach that. It's all part of it. And even the repairs around the pool skimmer would be, you would owe a reasonably uniform appearance for that, unless the skimmer was a voluntary action. Okay. And what I would say on that, I would say, look, I did the skimmer after my whole thing didn't match already. So I wouldn't take that. Okay, number 3, 5% extra for debris personal contents, when the limit is reached, when will that kick in after you turn in the recoverable depreciation and start to go over limits? It depends on your insurance company. Okay, I'm going to tell you, it's like pulling teeth to get State Farm to pay debris on personal contents. Their position is that you have to prove that you incurred the cost to move contents that was separate from your house debris removal, which is kind of ridiculous because all of it melts together. And to me, it's like if you go over your limits in coverage A and coverage B, or your other structures, then, and you still have some debris removal expenses, they should go to contents. So you might have to fight for that. But yeah, technically, if your policy provides that extra 5% for debris removal of personal property, not all policies do, pardon me. Then once you hit your limit and you go over your limit, then they should kick in that debris removal, okay? Okay, Stephen, in the new law on combining coverages, oopsie, hold on, it's jumping around. In the new law on combining coverages, does the new combining personal property and dwelling utilized in the purchase of a new residence instead of just a rebuild, does it apply to Woolsey Fire? Okay, so the combining of coverages does not apply to the Woolsey Fire. It really is, it was 2019 when that was put in place. Now you can always use your contents coverage. So there's nothing that's saying that you can't take your contents coverage and use it to replace your house if you're underinsured, but you're going to have to document that, okay? And you can also use the money that they give you for the other structure, but the deal is you have to document that you lost it, okay? So I think it might be a little bit moot. I'm not sure. If I didn't understand the question, clarify that for me. Okay. So Bonnie says, my previous question, whoops, I didn't see the previous question. Our ALE issue was an escrow that started in August and they cut us off in October and escrow closed December. Hold on, let me look real quick here. Let me see if I can find Bonnie's question real quick. 36 months is only for rebuilds, for purchases too. Okay, so Bonnie, yeah. It is for purchases too. So I'm not quite, was an escrow that started in August. They cut us off. Yeah, no, there's nothing that says it's only for a rebuild. So don't let them tell you that, okay? I'm not sure who your insurer is. So yeah, no, it applies to replacing too. Okay, I believe, this is Yvette. I believe they took advantage, stopped ALE at 4 months, yet signed and closed. I'm not sure what that means. Do I have recourse? So I'm not sure what signed and closed meant. And why did they cut you off at 4 months? The only thing that I could think is that it's a little bit different if you have a renter's policy, Yvette. I'm not sure, that's really the only thing, or a partial loss. I'm not sure. You're going to have to give me a little bit more information on that one. Okay. Oh, renter's insurance. Yeah. So renters is a little bit harder. So they really push to get you to relocate because it's going to be years for your landlord to rebuild. And I think that it depends on like how, if you're a renter, how long did you live in the property? So if you'd only lived in the property for a year before the fire, then I think, they can kind of push you to try to find a permanent housing solution. If you've lived there for 25 years, I think you've got far more of a case to say, look, I want to wait until my landlord rebuilds. So that's, if they closed 4 months after the fire, that was like 2 years ago. So you might be past your time, I don't know. I would talk to them a little bit. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so Stephen, if you're going to proceed with replacement by buying a new house instead of rebuilding, does the replacement cost coverage include the cost of landscaping and the cost of upgrades at the destroyed house, even though you're not having to spend funds on upgrading? So you're buying a new house. So your landscape coverage, so what you should do is you should just take your dwelling and extended dwelling coverage. They usually take like your other structure off, especially if you were underinsured on that. So I'm not sure I understand the question. Are they including the landscaping when they're figuring whether, like, they've already paid you for landscaping? So what I'm going to say is no, because especially if you live on a piece of property that had, like, say, a lot of trees, they're paying you for what you lost. Okay. And so they can't, like, not pay you for what you lost and then take it away from you when you buy a new house. So your landscaping shouldn't be included. And then the code upgrades, you're supposed to roll in there, even though you don't have to do code upgrades to the new house. It just goes into your bucket. The code upgrade and the extended replacement cost just go into your bucket to buy a new house. You do not have to spend the code coverage on code upgrades for the new house. Now, the only caveat, and if you guys want more information, watch that buy versus rebuild webinar, because you do have to spend it to get it. Okay. So if they're holding back, say, $100,000, say that you have $400,000 altogether. They've paid you $3,000, you've got $100,000 left. Well, if you only spend $350,000, you're only going to get $50,000 more. You have to spend it. Now, they're supposed to let you use the other $50,000 to do things to the house. The only thing is you have to actually do it to the house itself. You can't, like, put in a pool or something like that. You can do things like if it needs a new roof or something like that. So I hope that's clear. Watch buy versus rebuild. Okay. Christine, and we're getting to the end here. State Farm says their new policy won't cover code upgrades if the original building was not done to code at that time. My house is built in the 40s and 50s. There was no building codes in the place. How does this apply? Christine, so are we talking about the new policy that State Farm's rolling out right now? Because I am going to tell you that I've seen it, I've read it, but I don't know it. I worked for State Farm for 25 years, so I feel pretty confident that I know the old policy. They had the 7955 CA in place for a really long time. I'm going to read this. I don't know the answer to your question. So if you could explain a little bit when you mean new policy, because the new policy is just out now, so it wouldn't have applied to your house then. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Okay, and then Stephen's clarifying, for example, if your replacement is $1 million and you only have 800 in coverage for the dwelling, can you use the extra 200? Yeah, so you can use that for whatever you want. That's fine. My extended, the extended replacement cost, my policy says, yeah.
Yeah, for personal property, the question I think he's going to have is how he can access that, because if it's to get there, his inventory is going to have to exceed, or it's going to have to, when he's collecting his depreciated funds. I think that's where he's going to have an issue with that.
Okay, replacement cost for personal. So you don't really have extra extended replacement costs for personal property. So just for the clarification of that, extended replacement cost only applies to the building, unless you have a policy that I have never seen. So Stephen, you might want to look at that. Oh, and Christine's saying, brand new policy, trying to figure out the impact on a future claim. You know what, Christine? I would go to your agent and make them explain it to you. It's time that these agents started learning their policies and explaining them to people, and make them pull out the policy, make them explain how this coverage works, and tell them, you know, I have a house that's not upgraded and I want to have protection, and tell me how I can do that. That's what I would do there. I mean, it's time to make these people learn what they're selling. And I'm sorry, it sounds really harsh if any of our State Farm spies are here. That's what I think. Okay. You did mention about my question asked before the webinar. They've had my contents list for 5 months. Yep, I remember reading that. I called and was told they have not accepted my list, and hopefully she will know this week. Yes, so what I would do is go, I think it's 2695.7 in the California Fair Claim Settlement Practices Regulations, and it is just do a little, you know, in my computer, it's like Command F, and you can do a word search, look for the 40, and it'll tell you there. I think that they've lost their ability to refuse your list, and you know, they're probably going to say, oh, we've been sending you, I'm going to just show you here really quickly. You guys can, hold on, let me just do this. I just want to show you real quick here. So if we go California Fair Claim, see how often I look it up here. Okay, so we go here. It's the DOI site, Fair Claims Practices. If you go in here, and you can see the ones that are highlighted, this is the standards for prompt, fair, and equitable settlements. You click on it. Here it is, right here, B. Upon receiving proof of claim, every insurer, except the other, shall immediately, but in no event more than 40 calendar days later, accept or deny the claim in whole or in part. Okay. To me, they've probably waived their ability to deny your claim. I'm sure they would have a different statement on that. They need to be documented in the claim file. Okay, this is talking about denials, but if you go down here to C1, if more time is required, and this is what I would throw back at them, then is allotted, okay, from B above, to determine whether a claim should be accepted or denied in whole or part, every insurer shall provide the claimant within the time frame, so within the 40 days, with written notice of the need for additional time, okay? They're probably going to say they did that, but you're going to, a lot of you have these letters that you get every 30 days. It says, we are still evaluating your claim. We will contact you again in 30 days. Not enough. This written notice shall specify any additional information the insurer requires in order to make a determination, and state any continuing reasons for the insurer's inability to make a determination. Thereafter, the written notice shall be provided every 30 calendar days until a determination is made or notice of legal action is served. If the determination cannot be made until some future event occurs, okay, if they're waiting for something, then the insurer shall comply with this continuing notice requirement by advising the claimant of the situation and providing an estimate as to when the determination can be made. Pretty darn clear, okay? And I have rarely seen we call them 30-day letters. I've rarely seen any that actually comply. So I think you're in pretty good shape on this. And while we're here, I want to show you guys, was it you, Terry, that had, sorry for the scrolling, right here, 2695.9. This is for the patio matching. When a loss requires replacement of items and the replaced items do not match in quality, color, or size, the insurer shall replace all items in the damaged area so as to conform to a reasonably uniform appearance. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to stop sharing. So hopefully that answered. So I think, you know, unless they have miraculously complied with all those things I just read, Terry, I don't think they can refuse your list. I think it's too late File a complaint, absolutely file a complaint with the Department of Insurance. And who at the insurance is making this decision? You know, it's very interesting. So I'm not sure, who are you insured with, Terry? It doesn't say. And I don't remember, was it? Anyway, back in the day, adjusters used to have a lot of authority. The field adjusters especially had a lot of authority. I'm finding more and more, State Farm, I just heard, reduced all their adjusters' authority. So a lot of them, there's a management person making that list. That is not your problem. Their chain of command, Mercury. Yeah, Mercury is notoriously slow. And their adjusters don't have much, they don't have much authority. So that's not your problem. That's their problem, okay? And they need to follow the regulations. So I would really get on them. Okay, Sandra has one more question. Time limit for completion start at the time of the disasters declared or the time you actually start building. Actually, the time for replacement starts from the day you get your ACV payment, okay? So if they sent you a big chunk of money at one point, that's probably the day. So I don't think you're in trouble regarding the time limit because it hasn't been 36 months, right? No, it's been 2 years, November, December, January, February, March, April. So it's been 24, 25, 6, 7, 28, 29. So what I would do is any of you guys are still building or still looking, if you're still building, just write to them and say, you know, I'm aware of the 36-month time limit. And that would be from the date of the ACV payment, Sandra. So not, you know, I'm counting from the date of loss. But if they paid you, you know, a month later, you're going to get a month. Just write to them and say that you need time and tell them why. I don't think you're in trouble there. Done. Okay, Stephen, I do have, oh, you have a Chubb policy, 100% extended replacement cost for personal property. Sweet. Yeah, so you have to get through, I'd have to read the policy on your contents to get your debris removal. I'm not sure if you have to go through all your extended or not. In a nutshell, can I use those extended replacement cost funds from personal property for a replacement residence instead of having to buy a replacement? Yes. So your ACV money from your contents, okay, is yours. You can do anything you want. You can buy a boat, whatever you want to do. Your ACV money is your ACV money. Now, if you use it and you put it toward a house, then and you don't replace those items, then you're not going to get the replacement cost. That's all. So yeah, you can use your ACV. So if you can get your ACV over all your limits, then you can use all of that money and put it into a house. You can just, you know, keep what you have. Yeah, so that's up to you to do what you want with that, okay? So, and good on the Chubb policy. Those are great. I never get Chubb people. So yes, the answer to that is yes. And I'm sorry that took a while to get out of us. Diana, my house that burned was only 4 years old at the time of the fire, so the replacement cost should be almost the full amount. Yes, they should depreciate very little, Diana. You know, only, you know, so say for instance, most roofs have 30 years on them, so they should take 4/30ths of your roof, you know, and just a little bit. Did they apply a lot of depreciation? So because that should be sort of sorted out by now. Is it better to get more extended replacement cost coverage or code upgrade coverage? Can one be used for another? So this is mainly claims, but I'll tell you, they can't be used for the other. They're separate coverages. So code upgrade coverage, I always tell people, so you have an older house, you should get as much code upgrade coverage as you can. But I'm very worried about your first statement that says they're not, if your house wasn't up to code on the day that the policy was written. So figure that out. I don't know the answer to that question. Extended replacement cost coverage is something different. It's only for that, you know, the dwelling, increased dwelling. So that is important. And really you should insure your house to the amount it would cost to rebuild. So your coverage A should be the amount it would cost to rebuild your house as it is now. plus the code upgrade, separate coverage. The extended replacement cost coverage should be used for things like these big disasters. They're meant for like surge pricing and things like we've seen now. And the problem is that a lot of people and agents have used the extended replacement cost coverage as a way to sell a cheaper policy. If you know, people have been trained to buy insurance on price, and I've just been really on a rampage to try to get people, you know, I'm always the old insurance commissioner would get sick of me. I'm like, make Geico stop saying the 15 minutes will save you 15% or more, because you're going to get 15% less coverage. You know, shopping on price is a bad idea on insurance. And we do have some shopping tools. We have some comparison tools that you can use. But you really need to insure your house to value and use that extended replacement cost coverage as a buffer. And what they were doing is saying, hey, well, you have another 50% of replacement cost coverage, so we don't much have to worry about this, you know, and I can sell you a policy and lower this down, make it cheaper than the Allstate agent across the street. Well, until people's houses burn down and they're underinsured. So we know what that has. We had a huge delay and that FEMA was not able to clear out our property until April of 2019. That is a reasonable delay, Sandra, and that should be considered as part of your delay. Okay. And Diana says the estimate was very low. Let me see, I have to go back and see what we were talking about. The estimate from, let me see here, Diana. Oh, for your 4-year-old house. So if your estimate was low, is it low because it was overall low, or was it low because they applied a lot of depreciation? Because those are two kind of different things. You want to talk a little bit, Diana? We can, if you want to unmute, you can.
It was very low. It was with State Farm, and it was just overall low. So we're
underinsured.
No, we have more buffer. You know, our insurance coverage is higher, but their estimate is very low.
Okay, and if you have a substantial amount left in your policy that you feel, you know, is needed, I would consider paying somebody to do an estimate for you, and, you know, seeing if it's you know, 1.5%. Make sure to tell the people only to estimate like the dwelling and the code upgrade, whatever you need, and to keep like the plants, things that you've already been paid off.
Yeah.
But that's the best way to increase your coverage, is just to go and get somebody to write an estimate for what it would have cost to replace the house you lost. Did you buy it new?
Yes.
Do you know who the builder was?
Yes.
So it might be possible, it might be cheaper too, to go back to the builder and see if, because there's a difference between the market price that you paid and the replacement cost that it costs to rebuild. But are you going to use them to rebuild your house?
No, we want to purchase a manufactured home. That's why I'm not sure the right way to go about it, because we're not going to be spending as much on the replacement.
But so if they're really low, and they, you know, they'd apply their little bit of depreciation. I'm sorry, who are you with? State Farm? I'm sorry.
Yes, State Farm.
Okay. State Farm generally pays into the extended replacement cost coverage. Some of the, you know, Allstate and some AAA and those guys, well, sometimes AAA does, but anyway, if their estimate's low, but your actual cash value of the home you lost, so the replacement cost less depreciation, say it's low by $100,000, the only thing that you would leave on the table would be depreciation. You get the rest of the money. You're entitled to the whole ACV of what you lost. The only time it matters what you spend is the code upgrade coverage, so you might not need to worry about that.
Right.
And then depreciation, because State Farm's been paying their extended replacement cost coverage.
So I just need to submit an estimate of mine to counter what they have.
Yeah. Did they pay more than their coverage A for the house itself? Did they go into the extended?
No.
Did they stop right at the limit?
No. Under.
So they didn't even reach the limit.
Like 80,000 under the limit.
Under the coverage A limit. Yeah. I think you'd be worth, oh, 80, and you've got 80,000 before you hit coverage A?
Yeah, so I have
It's-
180 to go coverage
Oh my
A
gosh.
and then the over.
To me, if you feel very strongly that, the only thing I'm going to say is feel strongly that the house you lost would cost more than what they estimated. You
For
don't want to
sure.
go and get a
For sure.
estimate and have them have done a reasonable estimate, which is kind of unlikely.
With the prices now, it's for sure.
Yeah, so I think it would be really in your best interest, because so you get that whole actual cash value. The actual cash value is what you lost. So that's making you whole. Replacement cost coverage is like more. It's like saying, okay, you get a new roof and you get new everything. So that's something that you didn't have before, which is why they don't pay it until it's spent, right? You'd just be benefiting, you'd be making money off of it, right? But when you get your actual cash value, you're not making money off of it. You lost that. It's like, think about a car. If when you get the price for your used car, it's what you actually lost. It's the same idea. And then they just have these house policies just have this replacement cost coverage that gives you a little more if you spend it. So I think you would have, it could be that your ACV is, $100,000 higher. They pay you. It doesn't matter what you buy. You can buy whatever you want. You can live in an RV. It doesn't make any difference. So then you get to keep the extra money. So
That's what I was wondering. That's what I wasn't sure about. Thank you.
Yep, you get to keep the extra money. Okay. And thank you, Sandra. Nice joining us. I hope we answered all your questions. And then Christine, this is, I think, our last question. I think they mean if it wasn't up to code at the time it was built, they're not going to pay to bring it up to code. There were no codes when my house was built. Yeah. Well, I think it's important to know that, yeah, they don't just bring your house up to code. You have to lose it. I really need to read that new policy and see. And the fact of the matter is this new policy that State Farm's rolling out is going to be challenging for everybody, because it's been years and years before in California since they've had a new policy, and there's a lot of changes. As I went and looked at the DOI site on it, and it's just pages of things that they've changed. So yeah, and I stand by, I think you go to your agent and make them explain it, okay? Terry has a separate house not affected by the fire. The policy states coverage on the main house dwelling, and consider my secondary house as a separate structure outbuilding, which has a limit, but no details on the coverage like there is on the main house. So the coverages should be the same. Or is this Chubb as well? So the main thing with the separate structure, so if you have the main policy and you have a little guest house or something like that, the main thing is to make sure you have proper limits, okay? And usually the coverage is, at least the base coverage is the same for both houses. Sometimes you need to look and see if the extended replacement cost coverage applies to the separate structure, whether your code upgrade coverage applies to the second structure. Those are the two big things that I see that trip people up. But if you're Chubb, you're probably A-okay. But those are the questions I would ask about that, Terry. And I love that you're thinking about your other property, because now is the time to think about everything else. So, okay. So everybody, I think we've gone through all of our questions, and it's 6 o'clock. So we've been here for 2 hours. I really thank all of you for joining us, and I'm sorry that you're still going through this. Go use our website. A lot of this information is on our website. Go watch some of the webinars, and then we're going to keep doing. We got a little extra funding from the North Valley Community Foundation, so we're going to be here. I'm not sure how long it goes, but at least for another year. So we'll be here. We'll still be doing webinars. So and I'll be doing some Q&As, just all Q&A, where you write in your questions and we do the answers. So, okay. So thank you very much for joining us, and have a great evening, you guys. Bye-bye.